I'm going to jump right in so Julie, I'm going to start off by introducing you. Julie has traveled the world for over 25 years, very lucky, helping global business leaders implement the science of behavior analysis to achieve stunning results across tens of thousands of employees. While still a doctoral student at West Virginia University, she and a team of colleagues pioneered one of the most powerful behavior-centric business management systems available today. Initial large-scale successes at General Electric and other global companies led her to co-found CLG, now known as Alula, which has become one of the world's premier consultancies for behavior-based strategy execution and operational excellence. Recently, Julie co-founded Performance Ally to create enterprise software that provides real-time performance feedback and behavior change support to individual associates, leaders, and teams so adjustments can be made immediately to deliver both outcomes. This software, which is still in development, will optimize human actions real-time in any industry while creating a high-performance culture where employees win at work every day. Julie was honored to be inducted into the West Virginia Business Hall of Fame, as well as for receiving the Outstanding Contributor Award for Lifetime Achievement by the Association for Behavior Analysis International. She has served on numerous boards, including the Cambridge Center for Behavioral Studies and West Virginia University Hospitals. Julie won't rest or retire until a technology-supported behavior-based management system becomes the gold standard across all organizations, large and small, for getting the right things done every day to achieve unprecedented results. So, Julie, thank you so much for joining me and having this discussion with me about organizational behavior management and the future of work. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I love talking about organizational behavior management.
Perfect. And we're just having a good discussion about the weather. You seem to be very lucky up there in the semi-northeast. Down here in the southeast, it's looking pretty gloomy. But so let's get this started a little bit by. So I'd like to start off by asking you a little bit about OBM. So you've worked in several different industries, and you're well respected in organizational behavior management circles, and you've bootstrapped new businesses from the ground up. Can you talk a little bit about what projects you're currently working on? Could you talk a little bit more about Performance Ally and some of the ways in which it's going to help revolutionize business?
Sure. You know, one of the things that we did through CLG is we had a lot of large-scale projects, Adam, with mainly in pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, the financial industry, and people who really could afford to have boots-on-the-ground consultants setting up and wiring performance feedback systems for them. And many times, you know, we'd sit side by side with a leader. In fact, as we knew, it would take between 8 to 12 hours of individual coaching to get them proficient in their ability to actually do performance coaching. That old model doesn't work anymore. It's just too expensive for people, and people want really kind of, you know, 80% is good enough. Get me going, help me see some successes quickly. I don't need somebody sitting with me, you know, in the room to help me do the coaching. So I started looking probably about 5 years ago for a more modern methodology for us to help people do the really straightforward types of things that you would expect and hope every leader could do, but the things that they struggle with. So one of the things that we're trying to embed into our enterprise software is the ability for leaders and their direct reports to quickly coalesce around what the performance expectations are, right? How do you get to the point where they can pinpoint what needs to be done really, really quickly? Second thing then is, how do we determine whether or not somebody needs some in-process checks on what they're doing? You know, much like in quality management, we check the machines, you know, mid-process to see if they're going to ultimately produce the throughput. We don't have comparable sorts of things for human performance. And to do that in a way that people don't feel like they're being monitored and Big Brother is watching, but instead it's a helpful ally, you know, alongside them. And then the third thing that we're looking at is, how can you we talk a lot about the 5-to-1 ratio for, positive to constructive feedback, but we don't really have any good way to measure that. Things that are way too late, like people leave, negative work environments, kind of delayed sorts of impact on that. So in our system, we're actually measuring that. We're measuring the degree of feedback that people are getting and how they receive it and how it impacts performance. And then the final thing, a big thing that a leader needs to do is to remove barriers. And our system will have a barrier removal system that's behavior-based, that the root cause analysis that's done is more of a behavioral root cause analysis, and that will help remove barriers to day-to-day performance. So a lot of that, what we used to do, by hand-holding leaders and doing training and sticking with them until they got it, a lot of that now can be done using current mobile technologies. And we're really excited about it.
Are you going to be mixing a little bit of live OBM consulting with digital technology? So are you going to be also providing training on behavioral coaching, things like that, to go with the digital technology that you're developing?
Yeah, our goal though is, and we are originally as we get started, and we're finding some industries like healthcare, their leadership skills are so, they don't have a mature level of leadership skills, and the whole industry, they'll say that. So as we deployed at a children's hospital, they begged for more consulting support to get this started, and until they became comfortable with it. Now I'm dealing with another industry right now in fast food, and they're well trained on how to provide coaching, how to use data and metrics. They're well trained in work processes and things like that. So we're going to have a much faster start, and it won't require a lot of consulting support to get it going. So it just depends on kind of what the baseline level is. The other thing, Adam, that we're planning to do that I think is really exciting for the field and for our clients is we're going to be pricing this according to a SaaS sort of methodology. And built into that service as a software, pricing is going to be virtual coaching support. So every single employee in an organization will have access to a virtual coach, either for their own performance when they get stuck or when they're coaching someone else and they need some quick guidance in terms of how to approach that discussion. So I think that's going to, really create a performance-focused coaching industry that we're really excited about, because a lot of that can be done via call centers and using the data that's coming out of our system. It will help target that discussion.
Absolutely. If somebody wanted to find some more information about Performance Ally, where could they get that info from?
Well, right now we are currently in startup mode, so I just wanted to let you know that, okay? So they would need to call me directly. I'll take any phone call and talk with about what we're doing, because I'm really excited about it. But I'm at, my phone number directly is 304-216-6001 or jsmith@performanceally.com. We don't even have our website up yet, even though I've been working on this for 4 or 5 years. We've had a couple different iterations, and we've done things directly for businesses as sole providers. But I'm excited about the company that we're bringing up.
See, I love your level of commitment. I mean, you're willing to put your phone number out there just so you could get the word out on what you're doing, and you're happy to talk to people about it. That's commitment. I love it. Something that you brought up there when you were talking about the fast food industry is that they're a little bit more comfortable with making database decisions. Have you noticed an uptick in different industries in, let's say, the course of the past 5 to 10 years about utilizing organizational behavior management strategies, making database decisions? Have you seen the interest and the skill level of different professionals in different industries focusing a little bit more on behavioral science?
I have, and one of the things is I want to take some credit for CLG. When we first started, nobody talked about behavior. I mean, there were just a couple of small boutique firms that were really focused on that and doing a dynamite job. Okay, Ed Feeney, Aubrey Daniels. We were a small boutique firm when we started too. But we got traction very quickly and started competing against the really big boys like McKinsey and Bain and companies like that. They were befuddled by what we were talking about. Okay, and behavior at that time was not a good word. People thought of it as children behave. Adults have a different sort of thing that they go about. We slowly built that understanding in that industry to the point where I'm proud that some of the big people actually stole some of our slides and started talking about the ABC analysis and behavior. The problem is they weren't trained scientifically, and so they didn't know really what they're talking about. But I know one of the partners from McKinsey, and he said, we watch CLG, and twice a year we would talk about you guys, and to see if you were getting big enough that you were really going to be able to take away a big chunk of our business. He said we were losing big accounts to you and going up head to head with you. So we knew you had something, and we knew we had to talk about behavior and begin to build that base. And I'm proud that I think we were at the heart of that. And you can see many, many books now. You can see many leadership teams talking about behavior. The issue is do they know what to do about it? And do they know how to optimize it in the way that they optimize their other systems, performance systems in their organizations?
Absolutely. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the different aspects of my life, personally and professionally, where I've seen professionals soften to the term behavior. I was speaking with a personal fitness coach last week, and he started talking to me about, personal fitness coaching is all about behavior change. I'm like, that's great to hear that. So, I have to ask, how did you bring people around? How did you bring the business world around to the term behavior? How did you soften its approach?
Well, we tried a number of things. We tried actions. But early on, we didn't even talk about behavior. We had an APC analysis, antecedents, performance, and consequences. And performance was a mixture of results and behavior. Sure. But we just, we started talking about, in everything that we produced, we made a decision that we were going to stick with science. And luckily, clients who were very receptive to that. So as many people know, one of our early clients was in oil and gas, and they would show up for all of our conferences. A lot of those people got something that was comparable to a master's degree in behavior analysis. So as they began to get the word out, literally people who were on their boards began to talk to other board members of big global companies and said, hey, we didn't get the uplift in performance until we learned more about behavior analysis. And CLG is the firm to go to. So we got kind of passed around from board member to board member across different industries. And as we did that, behavior became an acceptable thing. And then literally, I can't understate the importance of the McKinseys and the Bains and those people coming to us, either trying to get some of our consultants or trying to figure out, how to partner with us, because we were already partnering on various projects because the executives, wanted CLG working alongside Bain. So it became more and more popular. And, I think you can see it now even in international politics. Obama brought on a behavioral scientist, and they spent a lot of time talking about behaviors they were looking for, from a United Nations perspective, rather than the old approaches around the attitudes. They talked a lot about the consequence structures and things like that. I think we're at a really good time now. Now's the time to help people systematize it because they still don't see how you can scale it up.
Absolutely. So we've been, talking around the acronym OBM and the phrase OBM, or organizational behavior management in general. And I know that there's a lot of different people that define it in their own way. So how would you define organizational behavior management?
I knew you'd come to that one. I struggled with that question when I got the preset. I think that for us to succeed, we've got to talk about it as a management framework. I think sometimes how we talk about it and how our clients view us is that we're kind of a set of tools. And you can take those tools out when you've got issues around people executing things or adhering to processes and stuff, then put them back in. Put them back in your box when you don't have those issues. And I think that's the wrong way to go about it. I spent a lot of time talking with Michael Harry, who is the founder of Six Sigma. Early on, we were also, we had Philip Crosby, who had Quality is Free and had one of the first quality management systems that went out nationally. He was very interested in acquiring an earlier version of CLG. And I learned from those folks what it meant to really have a management system. So I've done a little bit of publishing in that area, but I plan to publish a book that is comparable to what Philip Crosby did to get the management system going in quality management. And he published something called Behavior is Free. Quality is Free.
Right.
Quality is Free, and the art of making quality certain, how to manage quality so that it becomes a source of profit for your business. I've started on behavior is free and how to make execution certain. Okay? People don't know how to make daily execution certain. It really is it's a framework. I learned that on our early days at GE when they were deploying Workout. But Adam, there's a couple of really key things that a framework has. Okay, so one is it's got some things around a common mindset. So when we go into places, people will say, well, they're never going to change their behavior. They're too old. Or why should I have to reinforce them for this or that, right? So it's a mindset that is around behavior change that I think we need to address first before we get into all the different tools and the methodologies. Second thing is I think there's core principles that we need to get out. Like consequences are very important. And once people learn that, and learn that that is probably the biggest root cause of performance issues, it's a light bulb that goes off. We need to have easily accessible principles for people to look at. Then we get into our methods and tools, which we've got down, pat. They work. There's no doubt about them, but we need to get that out in common terminology so we can create a common framework for people to say, oh, that's how we address this. And then the final thing is what we don't have a series of management practices. So if you think about strategy management in an organization, everybody knows what that means. 30 years ago, they did not know what that means. Now you can go against a fiscal calendar, and know exactly how the strategy process fits in and the strategy management process fits in for every level of the organization. And we need something comparable to that in organizations. We need a management system that people know this is how it works and this is how I fit into it. And that's really where we're headed with this idea of our enterprise software will create the backbone for that management system.
How do you see, so you brought up the software a few times, and this is a discussion you and I have had a few different times. You've got a SaaS business, so do I. How do you see the interplay between organizational behavior management and digital technology? How do you see that playing into the future of work? So actually something that I was working on over the weekend was a learning management software system. And we were talking about the instructional design built into the learning management software systems. So we were talking about little things like response effort. How long, how many clicks do you have to engage in to get from one part of the system to the other, things like that. So do you feel, and whenever I attend instructional design conferences and workshops and events, I see people starting to discuss this a little bit more. They're not using our terminology, but they are starting to integrate it into their framework. So,
I see it in spades. So we saw it in the hospital system. So they've got electronic medical records, and that is set up to feed the beast for insurance purposes. It's not set up for the users to actually be able to easily extract things and make better decisions. Okay, so we had at our Children's Hospital project, I was so proud of what we had accomplished there because we were able to get one of the largest healthcare systems in the country to fly their executives up to this small children's hospital to see what we were up to. And at the end of the day, Adam, the chief nursing information officer, she turned to me and she said, not a single tool gets in my 90,000 nurses' hands unless I say it goes there. And she said, we just bought new mobile phones for all of them. And she said, I need what you've developed, but I need it customized for us. And she said, I've got a world-class, a globally best world-class IT department. She goes, I've got 300,000 employees, but I don't have anybody who thinks the way you guys do, who can make all of our software easy for the user to use and extract information and act differently. And she goes, so I don't know what to do. She said, I'm at a passroads here because she said, either I've got to hire you full-time to do that, or we've got a contract with you, but then you've got to agree to not give it to anybody else because it's going to be a major strategic advantage for us. And that blew me away because here she's got all the resources in the world, but nobody who thinks through every moment, what is it that the user needs? And I mean, from the patients to the hospital personnel to the people back in billing and coding, that whole system, what do they all need to get what they need to make their work easier and to reinforce each other for inputting accurate things? So I just see that in spades. I'm just at that fast food place, Adam, and they pulled out, sheets and sheets and sheets of metrics. So they're optimizing every single piece of machinery they have, every single work process they have, but they have nothing that goes to the individual performer to help them understand how they're contributing to those numbers. And I mean, these are people who have refined these systems for the last 20, 25 years.
Yeah, let's, and sorry about that. I think we have a little bit of a lag here. Let's stay on the fast food industry for a minute. I keep hearing different news stories about places like McDonald's and Burger King that are starting to automate away jobs. So I've heard the discussions about minimum wage and how some of the fast food giants are not going to fight the minimum wage thing anymore. They're simply going to automate away the people to take orders. And I'm not sure if they're at a place where they can automate away the people that make the food, but I'm sure that at some point that'll happen. How can organizational so how can OBM help with that transition? And is there any way, do you think, that OBM can help create new jobs for new workers coming in the next 20, 30 years?
I think there's things that will never be automated that are, that are humans have to intervene. So decision quality is one. And I think that you can get all sorts of data and input and information, but ultimately somebody's going to have to sift through that. And I don't see AI. I mean, there's lots of promise there, but I've not seen it pan out in the way that people are hoping. Not yet. And I think that's way off in the future. The other thing too is I think that the more we're doing, you've got somebody in the back actually flipping a burger, right? That's a robot. The more it's going to require customer service skills out front and people interaction skills. Okay. And the other thing too is, look at how many industries have been automated, and they still all require people to look after the machines to make sure that they're doing what they need to do, and to be able to fill in where those gaps are in case they go down, just like our communication Zoom did here. You've got to fill that in and figure out what to do. So I think that there's OBM can help with a lot of that. I think also what's really important is people automate because they're frustrated with variable performance. Okay,
I agree.
The more we can, and they're frustrated that the humans cannot produce things according to a standard. Right? So if everybody's up at a high level of a standard, you're going to be doing less and less to look at the automation in terms of it. I don't think it's all due to high labor costs. I think a lot of it's due to predictability, and I can't get the quality output that I need without thinking about automation. So that reducing that variability around human performance, I think for us is a big opportunity to help people excel and, in some senses, avoid the automation or show their value without having the automation.
Absolutely. So I'd like to make a little bit of a left turn here because I heard you talk a few times about leadership, and when we use the term or phrase organizational behavior management, I feel like the term management has become such a conditioned aversive. I feel like nobody wants to manage anyone else and no one wants to be managed. However, I think people want to lead other people, or in our case, lead their behavior. And I think people want their behavior led by others. So can you talk a little bit about the role that organizational behavior management plays in leadership and some of the research behind that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm going to share something here that was a difficult early learning experience for me. I got the opportunity to present before a global, one of the largest oils in the world, to spend a year developing a keystone course for their top 600 executives. That was going to be a week-long sort of experience. And they said, we love what you guys are doing out in the field. We can see how the leaders have changed as a result of working with you in the refineries and marketing, you name it. We can see the differences. So what is it that you're doing? And I had to sit down with the team, and one of the first things they asked me is they said, what does leadership mean to you? So I went in, Leslie and I talked about it beforehand because we had a list of questions, and I went in and talked about, it has to do with creating the clear direction, helping to ensure that people are competent to do what they need to do, the opportunity and the motivation around doing things. So we basically kind of painted the picture of the really big things that are needed from a behavioral perspective. And they said, nope. What does leading mean to you? What does leadership mean to you? It took me back. And then I had to draw on my own experience of making lots of mistakes at CLG and learning about leadership, just from the seat of my pants and doing a lot of reading. And I ultimately came back to a model that had been very successful, that I hadn't yet learned how to ingrain in who I was as a person or embed into my activities. But the model that I loved was Kouzes and Posner. We used it at a leadership curriculum that I developed for Bayer Corporation globally. And it's the first thing is model the way, the importance of modeling the way. And we talk a lot about the first thing is making sure that you're providing consequences. But no, it's just in general being a role model around the things that you're looking for. So rather than just lip service, you're actually doing it. And the second thing is to inspire a shared vision. And I learned that that's really hard to do. And we had to go to another model to help do that, which was Collins and Poor's around, what are our core values? What's our core purpose for being here? What are some big, hairy goals, and what would it look like on a day-to-day basis if we accomplish this big shared vision? So I did that. And then the other thing was challenge the process. So how do you bring up things and do it in a way that others can hear you and that it actually results in improvement, rather than kind of a top-down hierarchical, this is what needs to be done. Sure. And then enabling others to act. And the final one is encouraging the heart. Those last two, I think we get that from a behavioral approach. But there is an emotional intelligence aspect of it too that I don't think we learn in our graduate programs that has to do with servant leadership, shared leadership, the supportive type of leadership that goes way beyond, I might be the person that I think I've got the answers, but I need to be quiet and I need to hear what others have to say. And lo and behold, every time I did that, I learned a lot more and I didn't have all the answers. So it's those types of things. I think it's good to have a leadership model, not only for yourself, but also when you go forward to clients, because otherwise they're going to see the deep dive into the behavioral tools as being too microscopic. And people will start to ask, but where's the heart in this? Yeah. Or I don't understand how it's sustained, or I don't get the link to leadership. And I think we have to make that link ourselves as well as help our clients see that.
Absolutely. And you brought up clients,
but a good starting point, this is another thing I learned. At this point, most clients have a leadership model. Most clients have a feedback model. And their L&D people, learning and development people, have spent a lot of time working with their leaders on those models and selecting them and embedding them into different things. So I would start where the client is and how they think about things and what their terms are.
Absolutely. So I was going to ask something else about emotional intelligence, because you brought that up and that really set off a bell for me. But before we do that, I was interested by something you just said, where a lot of the clients that you work with have their own model for leadership and for feedback. So if you go in as a consultant, or you go in to provide a workshop, or to talk about some technology you're developing, and people are using a model that you feel maybe isn't behavioral, how do you have that discussion with the company or the executives about a different model of leadership or a different model of feedback?
Yeah, and that would happen with every client where we were. So we would often get paired with the HR people, because once they saw the value of what we were doing in operations, they wanted to make sure that it was embedded into their leadership training and things like that. So, and we would talk about that all the time. What do we do? And where we came out and where we were most successful is they're our partners. The HR people are our partners as much as the operations people. And we need to help them see how the things that we do actually help people put into action the things that they're training. So we would literally come up with a framework with them and with the operational leaders and executives that would work and merge those two things. And then often we'd work alongside HR folks who wanted to become performance coaches, in the field, and we'd help position them and train them and make sure that they were well established in their organizations and work alongside them. So my recommendation is don't fight that thing because people have a lot of ownership, over what they've spent a lot of time, and their careers have been built on the things that they put in place. So we can always fit in, and we're always the accelerator that helps, make their stuff become real and make it happen.
Excellent. So I would like to pivot over to emotional intelligence for a second. You brought that up, and I see that talked about so much. And I see it everywhere. I see it in Forbes. I see it in HBR. I see it on LinkedIn articles all the time. When I do consultation, I hear people bring that up, especially in HR departments, where they talk about the importance of having a high emotional intelligence quotient, a high emotional IQ. What's been your experience with emotional intelligence? Do you have a way that that you define emotional intelligence, and how does that relate to organizational behavior management? Because I feel like both of those terms are terms that we're not allowed to talk about, right? Emotions or intelligence in organizational behavior management, but it's important to the business community. So what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's really important. And I think people need to, for me, it comes down to just two simple things. One is your intent, okay? And your intent has to do with your emotions and what you're intending to make happen as a leader and the effect that you're intending to have. So if I'm angry and I, shout at somebody and I want them to know I'm really upset with them, then, my intent is to possibly do some damage. Okay. And we're all human, and leaders do that occasionally. And they act on their emotions, and they have their intent that they're intending and the impact that they have is aligned. Okay. So it's not enough though for us from a behavioral viewpoint to have your intent aligned with your actual impact on the person. We want to move both of those to a very positive sort of quadrant. Okay. So we should always be thinking about, even though I might be angry, if I really cared about that person, okay, if they were really a family member, if they were my son or my grandson, what would I do to help them? I would have good intentions, even though they might have really messed up. I'd have good intentions to not make them feel down, but I want to help raise them up. And so the intention, and then I would want to check my impact. I think that's a big part of emotional intelligence. It's not just doing the dump on somebody, whether it's positive or if it's a praise or whether it's negative or, positive. But you check and you say, where are you around this? How are you feeling? What more can I do to support you? What we just talked about, was that helpful? Those take a lot of emotional fortitude to open yourself up and be vulnerable in that way. But I believe that those are the foundation pieces and the only way that you can really become an effective performance coach too. You've got to be able to listen to people and figure out what's your impact, and did we have the effect that we're looking for? So I think it's really key. We don't talk about it a lot in our field, but we need to. And I really wish that in grad school I had that. And even in some of my early days, for 10 years, I consulted in a technology transfer group out of West Virginia University. And emotional intelligence I wasn't going to learn that over in the engineering building. So, I'm grateful for leaders. I'm grateful for a lot of true leaders that I said, oh my gosh, they are really good. I would say, can we go out to dinner and you tell me more about this? And how did you get that way? And, your style is really unique and the impact you have on people is unique. How do you do that? And usually it came back to some fundamental learning they had about themselves and how they were coming across and how they wanted to change that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like to use that. I hope I'm doing these segues all right, but I'd like to do a little bit of a left turn here. And with regards to emotional intelligence, do you feel like those skills are important in healthcare? I know that you have a background in healthcare, and just thinking about, and so do I, just thinking about patient care and interactions between doctors and nurses and their patients. Do you feel like that set of skills, emotional intelligence, is important for patient care and ultimately patient outcomes?
Oh my gosh. I think it has to do, if the physician in particular has emotional intelligence, I would love to do the research right now, and I know there's been a little bit, but patients are more likely to open up, and as a result, the physician gets better data that they can use for a more complete diagnosis, okay? And there has been some research on that, but they fundamentally don't believe that in terms of how they approach people, or they're not doing the checking to figure out, am I having the impact to get you to open up, right? They're more like, I got to get through this in 15 minutes. I don't want the person to open up. We've actually had them say that. I don't have the time for it. They don't pick up on your frown, or your hesitation when you're asked a question. And as a result, they don't get the complete data set. I don't feel comfortable, so I don't tell them, things that are difficult to talk to a physician about. And there's a lot of research on that too. There's certain areas like impotence, drinking, any addiction type of thing. Right down the line, the things that people are more likely to not tell you the truth about, but they don't take the time to draw it out and say, this is why it's important. Let's talk about your life, because this symptom that you're presenting could be part of a larger picture. So it's really critical.
Absolutely. So I wanted to do that segue into healthcare because it's an industry that we're both comfortable with. And I know that you were doing work before and are still doing work with regards to feedback in the healthcare industry. So how can organizational behavior management and some of OBM's technologies like performance feedback help improve really patient outcomes? So patient care is important, but I think I'm looking at it from a pure OBM standpoint where I'm thinking results first. So how can OBM help with patient outcomes?
Right.
Getting better, faster, and staying healthy for longer periods of time?
Yeah, one of the things, Adam, that shocked me when we started our process at the hospital is, first of all, only about 5 to 10% of patients will give real-time feedback. So there's no way that a physician can make an adjustment real-time to better service that person. So we were able to do some process changes and get that up over 99% of people providing real-time feedback. Okay, we did that by, first of all, sticking with their expectations, the patient's expectations of what they needed. So if you think of physicians not getting feedback from people just around how they're coming across from a patient experience perspective, they get almost zero feedback on whether or not their diagnosis was effective. So a patient leaves, they may never see them again if it works, and they don't know. Or the patient, if it didn't work, might opt to go to another healthcare facility, urgent care clinic, et cetera. They get almost nothing in terms of the core technical work that they do on whether or not they're effective. So one of the things that we talked about is how could we do, the physician loads up something that says 2 weeks out, you should be feeling better, given what we just did. And if you follow through on the things we talked about with the medications or whatever the regimen is, 2 weeks out, I'm going to ask you a couple questions on, did you understand what I said? Did you follow up on it? And do you feel better? So that way the physician can get feedback from a vast majority of patients around, was I on target? So it's everywhere in the system. The feedback loops are completely broken. And that's what we were trying to do, is to fix that so they get more immediate feedback. The neat thing is, once they get more feedback from more patients, by its very nature, they're getting more positive feedback. So it's a reinforcement sort of loop for them it was incredible. We didn't even have to do any management sorts of push on using the system, because the positive feedback, they were flooded with it every day. Whereas before, their other feedback systems, they only heard from disgruntled patients. So it was feedback, and nothing but negative feedback, forget it. So there's a ripe opportunity across the board for this.
Absolutely, and I felt like there's when you told me about the project that you were working on, I forget when we first talked about it. I think it was last year. And I thought about the feedback process and both people involved in feedback, and I felt like there's some hesitation on the part of both parties, actually, for giving and receiving feedback. So just based on the data that you mentioned, only 5 to 10% provide feedback of the patients provide feedback to their physicians. So do you feel like physicians and patients are both opening up to giving and receiving feedback a little bit more now?
No, I think that what we did is we completely redesigned the survey and feedback process. Okay. We re-engineered it using behavioral principles. And without that, we struggled for almost 8 months trying to, reward patients for giving feedback by giving them free parking, tickets to the cafeteria. We tried all sorts of things, right? And then we said, this is crazy. If it's going to take this much time, then it's not going to work. So we fundamentally put it on its end by asking them up front, this is a short visit with your physician. What do you need most beyond good medical care? So do you need us to be fast and efficient? Do you need us to spend time with you? Do you need us to be kind and courteous to your child? Or do you need us to act as a team so you know you're in good hands by all of us? These are all important, but which one's most important to you today? We started with that, and what patient wouldn't say, oh my gosh, you care about this? This is great. So we would say which one was most important, and we said why. And then we said, and who's in the room? So before they come in, who's in the room? What are your preferred names? And what are your relationships? So is the guy there mom's boyfriend, or is that, dad? So the physicians wanted that information. And that short little burst of information was what the physicians needed and the whole care team needed in order to voluntarily sign into the feedback system. So they didn't get feedback unless they became part of signing in to say, what's this patient want and who's in the room? They told us that was the most important reinforcer for them to sign in, as it helped them get the relationship off to a good start. So every little piece of it we had to knit together. And once we got that for all the players, it was really easy. We didn't need any management push to get people to sign up. It became a social type of thing of, did you get your feedback yesterday? Did you see all the patients who clicked your picture that said you provided outstanding service? They were like, oh, this is just great. And so they pushed each other to get into the system. So when they signed in as a provider, their picture would go down, and it would go in a row of pictures of people, other caretakers who'd been in the room. So they could quickly see, we're down in the ED, radiology's already been here, or the nurse has just been in. So when they came in, they could say, I've seen that, radiology has already seen you. They got it like that, and it made it reinforcing immediately for them to become part of that system and enter the data.
I love that. I think you just described exactly what we were talking about a few minutes ago, that interplay between OBM and digital technology.
Yep.
You basically created a movement of providing feedback, and where healthcare practitioners are reinforcing each other's behavior for providing feedback.
Yep.
So I love that. Were you able to see any positive outcomes that you could attribute directly to that feedback, where patients were able to communicate when they were feeling better faster? So what patient outcomes could you directly connect to that feedback system?
We did some surveying of patients, and they said it speeded up at the end of their visit, we would come back with a 30-second survey that said, you said this is the most important today. How did we do on that? Okay, so it was most important to keep me informed about progress and delays, because I've got to pick up another child at 4 p.m. And if I can't get out of here, I've got to make other arrangements. So the very first thing was, how'd we do on that? These are the team members who served you, all their current pictures and names and stuff like that. Click on the ones you liked, or that provided great service. And then this is the team behavior that we're specifically targeting for this week, working together to do. How do we do on that? And then what's the likelihood to recommend? So we were looking at likelihood to recommend, Adam, because that's linked to CMS reimbursements, okay? And their likelihood to recommend scores on their more formal surveys went up. We shadowed the caretakers, and they said they were able to spend less time getting the information that they needed, because normally all the information that was either at the door or started the discussion in the right way with the patient. They'd have to wander around and talk to each other and try to hunt things down in the electronic medical record. So things that used to take them 5 minutes to get the information, they now got it in about 2 minutes in very fast cycle discussions with the patients. So there's no doubt in my mind that was headed into a really significant thing. We've got a chance to do it at urgent care centers nationally with one of the largest payer groups in the country, and I think that will be our next application of it. And then I'm still considering what to do with the large hospital system, because if we could do this, across a hospital, it would be a miracle, because people are burned out and they feel like they're feeding that electronic medical record to no effect. And I really think it would have a dramatic impact on healthcare in the U.S.
Absolutely. And before we shift away from healthcare, for our C-suite listeners, the people that look at revenue reports, the people that look at the numbers at the end of the day, how can this positively affect payers and healthcare providers' bottom line? How can it help the balance sheet in reference to more time that doctors are able to spend with their patients versus less patients coming in? So how do you see this affecting the bottom line?
Well, I can give you one clear example, okay? And a lot of our customers, they don't like you to go public with the things that you've done because they wanted to keep things themselves, or consultants just aren't allowed to do that. An exception was Joe Jimenez. He was the CEO of Novartis, and I worked with Joe for years, starting when he was at Heinz. A couple of years ago, he was interviewed by the business section folks at the New York Times, and they asked him what were his most significant leadership learnings. Joe had been on a near Olympic team, a swimming team at Stanford. He talked about that, but he also said, I was dramatically impacted by one interaction that he had with CLG in a project that I led. He said it was the first time ever that I learned that behavior could be a root cause of poor performance. And the consequences that I was unintentionally providing were really contributing to a major forecasting problem that we were having at Heinz. So in consumer packaged goods, your monthly forecasts, you live and die by those, okay? Your earnings per share are affected by whether you're on target on your forecasts or off. And Joe had struggled to get Heinz Europe to provide accurate forecasts. He asked me to come in. They resourced everything at him. They had implemented a new forecasting system. They had done training with one of the top forecasting training and implementation groups in the world. They had upended some of their sales and some of their innovation systems, et cetera. He had done everything possible that a leader could do to resource better forecasting, and he was still missing the mark all the time. I went in and spent about a month with him diagnosing it, and it was clear that people had the tools that they needed, but they weren't using them, okay? And that if they brought bad news forward, they were really punished for it. Uh-oh. So they needed a behavioral approach system-wide with 500 teams meeting every single month on an add up across the forecast till it got to the business unit head, and then Joe would take that to the the national headquarters up in Pittsburgh. All those meetings, things were happening that got it a little bit off, a little bit off, a little bit off, and then finally really off. So one of the things that we did is we developed checklists for those meetings. We worked side by side with their forecasting training company, and lo and behold, people couldn't remember, what they had been trained to do. Week long of training, they couldn't remember, and everybody, huge behavioral variability across all those meetings. And then we coached and worked with Joe and his direct reporting team to accept, the bad news and what to do about that. Joe said it was such a huge learning for him. And we actually had to put a 4-month moratorium in place around bring forward all the bad news. There will be no negative repercussions. This is our time to clean it up and to figure it out. And stuff came forward. Joe learned more about his company than he'd ever, dreamt. And they cleaned it up. They got it turned around. Joe took a lot of those learnings then forward into Novartis. And I worked with him there to implement patient centricity and customer focus and patient centricity effort. And we helped him make that real and to behavioralize that and build that into his management systems. And dramatic change at the top. It was 100 is what we focused on initially to kick it off, because what we found is the consequence history is they kick it off, but the senior leaders wouldn't do anything different. So this time we said, tell the organization, we're not going to deploy anything until we do things differently. And we identified 3 critical behaviors for them and got that going over a 6-month period. And people were like, oh my gosh, they really mean it. They've embedded this into the way they're approaching our management review processes. I mean, they're coming out in country and meeting with customers and helping us. These guys really are serious. They really mean it. And then that resulted in a flow down in the organization. So executives really, I took a lot of time to help Joe to figure out how to engage as an executive in terms of managing multiple businesses and to embed the very, very critical strategic initiatives into his day-to-day processes and to cascade that. But it's very doable, and it will be even more doable once we have seriously, a management system once we have the software. Because again, we had to feed all the information in, we had to collect all the data.
Absolutely. I was sitting there just these past few minutes listening to you in awe about how you were working with such large teams at large companies. It made me think about your breadth of experience, that not only have you worked with large Fortune 500 companies, but you've bootstrapped companies from the ground up. So I'd like to do a not so subtle shift over to entrepreneurship. I think that in the past decade, there's been an uptick in people starting their own businesses in a wide variety of different industries. How do you feel OBM can help somebody that wants to start a bakery or do a tech startup or start a healthcare practice? Where do you think OBM helps out? Is it with measures? Is it with vision and mission development? What are your thoughts on entrepreneurship and OBM?
I think you just took me back to one of my very first projects as a grad student. Is we helped a local coffee shop improve their turnaround performance and the quality of what they were giving to people, so they didn't have to do rework. And we did that for very selfish reasons, because we were using the copy shop a lot. So we didn't get involved at that time around, the purpose and the vision and things like that. We just went right into the nuts and bolts of how are people communicating with each other? How are you tracking orders? How are you reviewing things from a quality perspective, et cetera? And they just had phenomenal success, and it took a load off of the copy shop owner's back once he learned how to manage people, because he didn't know how to manage people. And they got actively involved and owned it themselves. So that is a core. I think most small business owners don't have the core of what we do. And I think that for a lot of people, we should focus there. Just go into their operations and help them figure out how to set up those feedback networks, okay? And how to set up the review processes so employees can support each other. So I think that that's probably the biggest gift that we give. A lot of that starts with training, but what I've found is that you need to handhold into actual implementation. And once you do that for part of their operation, they'll begin to generalize for things for other areas. So I think we have a lot to offer to small business people. It's around goal setting. It's around the delineating the concrete behaviors that people need to show every day, and then it's really around hardwiring those feedback loops and helping them learn how to do that, and then making sure that you've got a good pulse on employee engagement, so you know if those feedback loops are being used in a powerful way, positive, powerful way, versus if they're being, misused to catch people doing things incorrectly. So I think OBM has a tremendous amount. I would tell anybody who's studying behavior analysis and interested in OBM, go volunteer somewhere. There's not a single organization that's not broken. That couldn't use the help of what we're doing to improve performance. And so go to, local animal shelter, go to a church, go to any place that has an organization and needs to better manage people, and you'll find they're afraid to have the discussions that they know they need to have. So just go and offer your help and let them know, what the elements are and where you're going to head. But you'll learn a lot just by cutting your teeth that way. And that's literally what I did. Adam, I made a mistake. I've got just a real quick story. I taught a OBM consulting class probably 15 years ago. And one of the things they had to do over the semester is they had to find an industry and develop a proposal. Okay, and I had to get an understanding that they understood what the industry was experiencing, potential strategies, and what the pain points were. And then they had to find a client, develop a proposal, present it. And the thing I didn't count on, there were 15 students, and by the end of the semester, and they had to have a budget and everything, 10 of them actually had paid projects. And they go, what are we doing? Oh, no. But that just tells you how hungry people are for this. So I had to work another semester just working with them individually to help them actually implement.
That's great job placement. I mean, right away. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
On that note, we've talked about a few different industries here. We've talked about healthcare. We've talked about entrepreneurship. We've talked about digital technology and performance feedback. Based on your experience, what are some of the more relevant topics right now in business where you feel that OBM can really lend a hand? I mean, I see so many different topics, so many different industries. We were talking about fast food. We were talking about healthcare, hospitals, patient care, digital technology. Is there a particular area of business that we haven't talked about, or a specific issue that's come up in most businesses where you feel like OBM can really help out?
Yeah, I think where we fit best and where I would position the management system that we're working on is around execution. Okay, I think we should follow strategy people, set the strategy. They do that. Only 30% successfully execute a strategy in companies or achieve the goals that is set out. That's where we can play and we can really excel. Process improvement, same thing. It's been studied to death. The Six Sigma experts or quality management folks come in, help redesign a work process. 6 months later, it's really clear only 30% of what's been put in place is still being adhered to. People fall back to their old habits and the things that work. So, and they don't know what to do about it. So I think that we need to position ourselves solidly as we are the people who help you get things done day to day, okay? We've done that in some senses with behavior-based safety. And I love one of the executives we work with at this oil and gas company. She said, when I think of CLG, I think of, you guys do the unsexy work. I'm like, what? She said, like you get the washout every day. She said, you make sure people are safe and they go home at night. And they're whole. And she said, we get the productivity done, et cetera. I said, you do know that we worked with your top 600 on decision quality and the behaviors that underlie making a really top-notch decision on spending capital of $25 million all the way up to $5 billion. I said, that's sexy stuff, right? And she goes, yeah. Are you guys doing that? I said, yeah. So I think, but it's around, we've got these tools in place, we've got these IT structures, we've got all the training done, but nothing happens. And every executive goes, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'll just have to sunset that initiative, or I'm going to have to, pound the hammer harder in the organization, or I'm going to have to change out people. And we're the people who can help them see, like what Joe Jimenez said, my God, behavior is a root cause of poor performance, and there's a way to address it. That can get me results almost immediately. We would get results within four months of implementation on really large scale types of deployment, across 10, 20, 30,000 people. And, our methodology, our tools can do that. We just have to position it such that senior leaders see it as a legitimate management system.
Absolutely. So before we get into our last topic, which is talking about your future plans in business and organizational behavior management, I did want to touch on some of the other performance improvement methodologies that are out there. You brought up Six Sigma a few times. I know you've done a presentation in the past on how Six Sigma came to be. So how would you compare and contrast OBM to other performance improvement methodologies out there like Six Sigma? And I don't want to, beat up Six Sigma. I know it's been very effective. Do you feel like OBM can complement things like Six Sigma or other performance improvement methodologies, or do you feel like they play well in the same space? What are your thoughts?
No, I think that we absolutely complement, and we're necessary to make those types of programs work. Okay. When I worked with Michael Harry for about a year, and he was a really outgoing, wild cowboy type. But he turned to me at one point. He goes, "If I had met you in the '80s," he goes, "we'd both be billionaires." He said, and he formed a company that went to about 150 million, and it started all the Six Sigma certifications, stuff like that. But he said, "Julie, I never knew how to make it stick ever." And he said, "I could make it part of their management system, part of their strategic management process, and you need to have these projects laid out and completed." He said, "But I never ever got it to stick." And he said, "So if we had just met and been able to dovetail it into that system, it would have been very powerful." Now, I'm kind of glad that we didn't meet, because I wouldn't want to be pigeonholed to making Six Sigma work. Okay, we make anything work. We are the behavior science should be like the Intel Inside.
Love that.
You buy a computer, but you see right there Intel Inside. Well, we should be behavior science inside, ABS inside, or whatever we call it. We are the science of what works in behavior change. And we can switch that. We've got to work on some of the branding, but it could be the science of what works in execution or whatever it is. But we are that. If we can embed in anything, I don't think we should get into bed with one particular group, because everybody's struggling with execution. Look at customer service. Look at even process optimization. You look at anything. Organizations are structured to try to bring about productivity improvement through. They all struggle with implementation, and we can be the underpinning to all of those. We just need to properly package it, which is what Michael taught me. It's the packaging, and then it's the success across a large system. Like CLG had success across large systems, but it would be project oriented. Okay, we need success across a large system for any sort of performance indicator. So in my head, if we could do something with the McDonald's, that would be or a fast food place across a large system, and show that this is the underpinning and this got the lift across 2 million employees. Woo, there'd be no stopping us.
I love that. And so if I'm understanding what you're saying, then companies that are already implementing a particular methodology could still benefit from technologies in organizational behavior management to come in and help with everything from execution to leadership. So OBM can complement other models, is what I'm hearing, right?
Yes, exactly. We had a refinery over in South Africa that they were going to shut down, and because of environmental spills. Would have just been a shame. Each and every employee supported 45 other people. Okay, significant job. It would have been horrendous for the area. So, and they said, well, the big problem is it's a diversity issue. They've got a caste system, and people just won't talk to each other. So they said, could you come in and do diversity training, diversity and inclusion? We said, why don't you get somebody who's really good at that, because that's not our bread and butter, but it's going to be needed. What we'll do is we will guarantee that we will get people talking together about the business, okay, regardless of what the castes are, because that's their common motivation, is to keep that business going. And the way to do that, we'll show them, is they have to talk to each other. And we'll show them how to do that in a way that will be kind and considerate and productive. And we did it. But we worked alongside, like diversity and inclusion. We've worked alongside strategy consultants. We worked alongside cultural change consultants. I've worked alongside some of the really big ones in the field, like Sen Delaney and others. I honor what they do, but that's that next level of taking it down to, okay, what does it mean on a daily basis, and how do we sustain it? And how do we make it business focused? That's where we come in, and we win every time, because others just don't have that sort of a methodology or approach to it. And the successes that we've had.
Excellent. So with our few minutes that we have remaining here, I wanted to really open the floor to you here so that you could talk a little bit about what your next projects are or what you're currently working on a little bit more, and where you see yourself in the next few years. You've had such a distinguished career. I think a lot of people would be interested to hear what you're working on next.
But one of the neat things is I go to the Cambridge Center for Behavioral Studies. I was on the board and also a trustee, and I'm the youngest person there. So behavior analysts live forever. There's several in their 80s and 90s, and I'd say, God bless them, because several times I've considered retiring, but it's just, there's something that's just so seductive and enticing about a field where you see light bulbs going off every day and people, bringing more joy to work and having more fun and being more productive and helping each other. So I doubt, people ask me all the time, are you going to retire? And I say, I can't, I've given up on that. So my goal is literally to get this, the foundation for the enterprise software created. And I know that's going to take a little bit, but I'm crafting it such that it can go to any industry. And Adam, as you know, we started out thinking we'll do healthcare because it's so complex, and then it will transfer. We've had a lot of learnings in that, and I'm now developing it in a different way to ensure from the get-go it can go to any industry. Second thing then is I am going to write that Behavior is Free. Shame on me, I haven't been doing a lot of writing over the last 25 years. I've been, building a business and getting projects done and doing client-based writing. I'm at the point now where I want to get that done, and I've been working on a very simplified system that we can get it out there pretty quickly. I'm also going to set it up in a way that Leslie had helped me do this when she wrote her book on, let's see, it's Unlock Behavior, Unleash Profit. And we constructed it such that you could have different examples by industry. I'm setting up this book that the cases at the end of each chapter can follow an industry. So I'm already deep into discussions at the state level about developing a performance support system for teachers for K through 12, where they would be getting feedback from teachers, parents, and principals. Principals themselves, 60% of them say, I don't know how to do coaching. I have to do it 4 times a year, hold them accountable, but I really don't know how to do it. So I'm excited about potentially bringing it to that industry. We've got the same opportunity with a major land grant university where they're saying our faculty members get no feedback. And, unless something goes wrong and they get poor student evaluations, then somebody's called in. So they're like, oh my God, this would be great. We want the students also to become better at providing feedback. So we're headed in terms of creating a kind of a circle of support. That's why we call it Performance Ally. It's an ally network where we're all working together to improve the situation and the experience for all of us. So, I want to change the dialogue that's online in terms of it being positive and helpful. And we've thought of some ways to do that in the system so you can indicate, was this helpful? Do I know how to act on it? And then people can begin to get a profile for themselves on, am I a good performance coach? Am I helpful? So I'm really excited about that. I think the book coupled with the technology, the third leg of it will be very powerful. But I think the third leg of the stool that's going to be needed is we're going to have to figure out some way to train people in this more quickly. The performance coaching call center, the virtual coaches that I talked about, I think will be one mechanism to do that. But we need people at a higher level. The thing that was always a struggle at CLG, there was only a couple of us who could do the pinpointing on really complex projects. And I'm telling you, it's like this. You're shaking if you've got to pull the pinpoints on 4 behaviors for 30,000 flight attendants globally. Right? You better have a lot of confidence, a lot of guts, and a lot of data. And also you better have a way to check and see, did we get the right 4, in our experimental process, or do we need to change? So we need to train people, to do that and support them. And I think it's going to take a community of behavior analysts to do that. And, I've been looking at like the Cambridge Center and all the skill and expertise that's there. And maybe there's some way we could use a crowdsourcing capability where we've got retired people and, people who can help do some of the core things that need to be done.
Absolutely. I think the Small Business Administration in most counties has a sub-department. It's called SCORE.
Yeah.
I used it, yeah, when I started my first business like 18 years ago or something like that, where it was just retired executives that sat down and gave people advice.
Aren't they? Yeah, they really
yeah, it was super helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I have to comment really quickly too on the education aspect. I think that's so great, especially with universities or anywhere K through 12, where you get really subject matter experts teaching young people, and they may be experts, as I said, in mathematics or history or a specific area of science like biology or chemistry, but they're not experts on instruction or instructional design. And how to provide feedback. So getting in there, I think will help everyone. So I love that that's part of your roadmap. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. We've got a big presentation this week, so keep your fingers crossed for us, okay? Because it's been amazing. It's just like any other system. When you start delving into it, you see how misaligned everything is, you know, and you say, oh my gosh, we could bring a lot of clarity and alignment to that, so people know what to do to succeed and get the results that they're all accountable for, and that they're just not sure what to do. So the state, it's the state of West Virginia, you know, that's looking at it, and we led the nation in teacher strikes. Well, that tells you something, right? And everybody wants improved scores, and they're thinking, okay, well, we'll just do charter schools or we'll do this or that. But when you look at the day-to-day practices, in terms of the alignment. So it's just a lot of power we can bring to this. Absolutely.
Well, I want to make sure and respect your time. So thank you. You've already spent over an hour with me. And this is for our inaugural Behavior Science Magazine issue. So thank you for taking the time. We were very honored that you accepted to be interviewed. We're going to put a whole bio in the first issue that talks about all of your accomplishments, and I think everybody will get a better understanding of how important you've been to the development of organizational behavior management as a field, to behavior analysis as a field. You were talking about your work with CLG and softening the impact of the term behavior. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for doing this interview. And I know you said it's a really nice day outside where you are, so thank you for sitting inside and talking to me as opposed to being outside and enjoying the day. So thank you. We're very appreciative.
I really appreciate it, Adam. And you guys are on a wonderful quest. It's very needed. So let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Seriously. I mean, this is obviously behavior analysis has been very good to me, good to my clients, but it needs to be more broadly disseminated and in a way that is people just say, oh my gosh, you know, this is the best thing since sliced bread. So anything I can do to help. I love that you guys are getting the word out there. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you again. And I've been recording this whole thing, but we're going to edit it out a bit. So we cut out some of the times when the internet went out and things like that. And then before we publish everything, we'll send it over to you so you can take a look.
Okay, probably some dog barking in the back is going to have to go too.
That's okay. We actually, really quickly, I saw some data from YouTube, and it showed that people are more engaged with videos that seem like they have less production value because it seemed more authentic to them. So that's good. If we have some dog barking, that's perfect, I think.
There you go. Okay, thanks. Tell Manny hi too, okay?
I will. Take care, Julie.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.